Hello, this will be part 28 in the series An Ancient Legacy, and I'm going to try and do, well, to demonstrate, firstly, I believe I've established a system of measurement which, again, connects to so many ancient sites around the world, gone through that, uh, nearly 30 episodes, so, I think it'll be well over 12 hours or something like that now. But to stick on the connections and as it is a legacy and has it's carried through. So we had this uh, basically between 2500 to 1100 BC, which is then what we have is a dark age, often referred to as the ancient dark age. So around 1100 to 800 BC, we see a collapse in trade, all sorts of systems, and then we see a re-emergence of it. But then through that period, we go through the Greco-Roman period. Then, of course, we have the Dark Age. So in Western Europe, at least, there was a Dark Age, while in Byzantine, other areas, the legacy, the ancient temple, the plan, the template, which is used for these templates, continued. But then around about the year, well, here the 12th century, so around about from 1100, we see a re-emergence. And for instance, this is a classic example where instead of the old Romanesque with very thick walls, very small windows, we see these type of cathedrals emerging. Masters of engineering to build these high, thin walls with lots of glass between them to support these very elaborate roofing systems. And it's a bit of, but anyway, hidden throughout all of these temples, whether it's a cathedral or a mosque or a Buddhist temple, pagoda, they all consistently carry these same signs and symbols, and Beauvais Cathedral here is one example. But so now we have Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, Stefan van Leffringe talking about the royal foot. I'm calling it the medieval royal foot just to distinguish it from such others as a Babylonian royal foot, but how the cathedral here in Notre Dame is built using this unit to bring it to 30 and 60 royal feet, which are indicative of these older legends of Solomon's temples. Again, earlier video talked about Ain Dara being a prototype of prior to Solomon's temple, but that these legends, especially those being a cathedral, biblical, so whether it's New Jerusalem or Solomon's temple, how these numbers are very important in the design of a cathedral. The cathedral is not just a collection of stones; it's also meant to be a representative, like a Bible written in stone. So, like the Bible stories in the stained glass, but even the number of columns, distances between columns, all these types of features. And so the medieval royal foot, which has been this recent focus, but of course connects to the Great Pyramid as well. So the northeastern corner of the pyramid, the pendulum cubit, which emerges from this medieval royal foot, exactly describes the size of the Great Pyramid. But that was in other episodes. But so this is the height here on the inside. We see 144 medieval royal foot. Now the total length of Beauvais Cathedral, 70 metres. Well, 229.6 feet is 69.9802 metres. It'd be astonishing that they built it. No, even 70 would be representative and important, but it would be astonishing that it's exactly 70 metres. We see it's a difficult subject to get for anyway, but 70 metres, and we've already established, and some other researchers, the Building the Great Cathedrals documentary, Nova documentary, excellent watch if you're new to this. But okay, so what do we have? Again, we already have established the medieval royal foot, not just in Beauvais, but also, as for instance in Notre Dame, it was this ancient unit in fairly common throughout that period, but also I would say something much older, and another example of this ancient legacy. But 210 feet. Now, divisions such as the inch, the foot, the yard were common throughout. So especially again in this area, inches, fingers, hands, palm. They again, it's not. These are written down. There's quite a bit of evidence for these as well. The 12-inch foot, etc. 3 yards being 1 foot. Again, sort of a standard that's carried through. However, so at 210 medieval royal feet, we see the length of the cathedral, and we get a bunch of stuff. So that's 210 medieval royal foot. How does that connect again to this Holy of Holies, these design fundamentals, which are so aptly described by the Great Pyramid? And so, for instance, the southern base, the average from the southwest would give us 756 feet or 252 yards. It must be noted that no one side of the Great Pyramid is exactly 756 feet. They're all within a few inches of one another, which again connects to some very elaborate, very important knowledge. But just that this 756 feet or 252 yards, these numbers being represented here, that there should be, take these into consideration. It's a little bit, it's not exactly 756 feet on the southern face or any face, but there is the southwest does give the average for this. But at so 440 Egyptian royal cubits wide would be 756 feet, above 99.9999%, and the height of a pyramid would be 280 Egyptian royal cubits. So we see 756, 252, 280 reflected here, but also if you include the total height of a pyramid, including the subterranean portion, so the maximum visible height and the maximum invisible height as well, that's 336 Egyptian royal cubits. We see again 336 reflected here. So the basic proportions of the pyramid, the idealized proportions of the pyramid, would be embedded in these numbers. But we also see at 12.727272 chain, also the important proportions of the pyramid itself at 1.2727. So just shifting a decimal point. 756 for these other, 252, 63 being other examples. So 7 plus 5 plus 6 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. You automatically know that this is a divisible of 9. Any number where the numbers add up together, so 18 is 2 plus 2 times 9, 1 plus 8 is 9. Any number that where its digits come together on 9 or a division of 9, you know that it's built on this 9 number as well. And then it connects to 210 feet. This is another interesting point, but that's got to do with alchemy and astatine, and I'll get into that maybe sometime in the future. But 756 is also a lovely number in that 8 over the Royal Mile, as in the Royal Mile in Scotland, 8 miles equals 7 Royal Miles is a conversion. So 864,000 miles defining the sun, that would be 756,000 Royal Miles describing the sun. We see a description of the Earth, also of the Pentagon, with by definition phi as well, 252 degrees being the outside angle there, and as well as 252,000 stadia being the description of the polar circumference of the Earth. Pliny was one of those who mentioned this. Eratosthenes 250,000, but either way we have again this quite ancient measurement and this particular number 252. But if we go back a moment, we're up there, and okay, so back to the 1.272721 being the description of the pyramid angle under ideal measurements, and that being a shifted decimal point. But that's also relevant to describing the size of the sun, of the moon in relation to the Earth, which comes from this Fibonacci angle of 55 over 89, effectively pi. And also worth noting, so the by definition, that's 1.6181818 slope angle, 1.2727, which again, they're both very, well, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if this was pi exactly, the slope angle, that would be the square root of phi, 1.2720. Anyway, but again, we see of ideal measures, we get very close to phi. We actually, if you use the accurate measurements of the pyramid, we actually get phi to well above any acceptable level of precision. But of course, so we have Sun, we have the Earth, and what I mean by bringing this back in, because we also have the Moon as well. So Sun, Earth, and Moon we see reflected here. But also, so 280, 28 being this triangular number, also a lovely number in arithmetic. Of course, it's a description of the pyramid. But also the lunar mansions, as they call it, but the 28-day month, which brings us to the menstrual cycle, and at 210 or 21, again, this important number, Freemasons, alchemy, Kabbalah, the Fibonacci numbers, again, of course, Greek and Hebrew alphabet, but also both 21 and 210 being triangular numbers, which of course will connect directly to the Tetractys and to an extent to Plato's lambda. But this is of 210 feet, as in Beauvais, worth mentioning because in places such as Kercado is 210 feet, 21 long foot passage, which would be 1.2727. Again, where we see the same numbers and the ratio appearing, it's just a shifted decimal place. Stone Seahenge would be another example, 21 feet diameter, encompassing this same system, part of its ancient legacy, and we still see it carried on. So, over 800 years later, 800 years later from Beauvais, places such as the Indiana War Memorial, the Scottish Rite Cathedral, Indianapolis, and the Basilica of Immaculate Conception in Denver, again being another example at 210 feet high. So again, incorporating these same system, exact same sort of system of numbers. Manchester United Independent Order of Oddfellows. These are the Masons that just as big and important as what Masons were a century ago, but not so well known, not so well appreciated. The history and the importance of Oddfellows, Druids, Buffaloes, and Masons in places such as Australia, America, England, Canada, is very much underappreciated, misunderstood history there. But anyway, so their headquarters in Melbourne, Australia, or their former headquarters. This was an iconic building, dominating building in Melbourne for quite some time. That's 210 feet as well. Could mention a whole bunch of other, both modern and ancient examples, but been through them. And so this is part of the ancient legacy, and how these important numbers and proportions are encoded through number and proportion from the Great Pyramid up until the modern day, and Beauvais Cathedral being in the sort of center point, but it's got the same thing going on. It's just whether it was a series on the US state capitals, New York, Washington here in Australia, other ones in Canada, London, Paris, major monuments, major memorials, all focused on these very specific, very important set of numbers. I could bring up a lot of other examples just because I just happen to have the folder open. The Arc de Triomphe du Carousel, just like ancient Roman arches and earlier ceremonial entrances to cities, especially to the marketplace, structures such as this not only would incorporate the standard measurements of that empire or that city, but there would also often be a zero point. So, for instance, the Golden Milestone in Rome, all measurements were measured from there, and there was also some markers to show what a foot and important for the marketplace. But the Arc de Triomphe du Carousel as well. So we have 252 and 756 and 63, 28, 21. Same numbers as here in Beauvais Cathedral. And that's, I suppose, 252, 756. So we see these same, whether they're monuments, memorials, cathedrals, major public buildings, what you find is that just consistently and all the time, it's just about understanding what was the language that they were using, and the language is so often defined by what system of measurement they're using, and they always come back to the one system, and that so often is described by the Great Pyramid. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.